The original trilogy wouldn't be half as good if it wasn't for the editing, and heavy editing leads to lots of content being left out of the finished films. Today, I'll not only be analyzing all deleted scenes from the originals, but also ranking them to see which ones work versus the ones that undeniably don't.
Wait.
Starting off with A New Hope, at number 9 is Old Woman on Tatooine. This one is very short and is more of a deleted shot than a deleted scene, so that's why it's so low. And 8th is The Search for R2. While this would have shown Luke and C-3PO getting some more time interacting alone together, which is cool as they had an interesting dynamic, this is a classic case of the bad 1970s green screen car scenes, such as the sail barge scene in Return of the Jedi, that is unnecessary and better left out of the film. 7. Stormtrooper Search. This scene, which gives us a few more minutes of the stormtroopers on Mos Eisley looking for the disturbance in the cantina earlier, it's a very unnecessary scene, but then again, I'm a sucker for sand troopers, so I love seeing more of them. And also there's this cool use of a giant alien next to a dwarf person, which is pretty cool. 6. Aunt Beru's Blue Milk. This is a shot of Aunt Beru pouring blue milk and is a decent establishing shot that expands some of the food and cultural lore of Star Wars, specifically Tatooine, while also not seeing all that significant at the same time. While we do see blue milk in the final scene, this part of her pouring it out is not anywhere in that part of the movie. 5. Darth Vader widens the search. This scene, which shows Vader and Chief Mortimer Bast walking through the Death Star, discussing the search on Tatooine, while this does add more stakes to the Mos Eisley section of the movie and make it feel like there's a proper hunt for Luke and Obi-Wan, as well as the need for them to leave as soon as possible. And it also shows some of the distrust towards Tarkin, as Bast says this line here. Until then, we waste time with Governor Tarkin's foolish plan to break her, which I think is interesting and adds to the power of Tarkin, but at the same time, this scene breaks up the pacing too much during this part of the movie and just doesn't really work too well. 4. Alternate Biggs and Luke reunion. The only difference between this so-called deleted scene and what we get in the newer releases of A New Hope is that the Red Leader pilot Garvin Dreis says he met Luke's father when he was just a boy. I like to think that Anakin met him on one of his adventures during the Clone Wars. 3. Cantina Rough Cut. This is an early black and white version of the cantina scene, and while it isn't nearly as fun and ingenious as the one we know and love, without all those insert shots of friggin' Dan and his band, also the aliens as well as the quick pacing, this slower, more tense version of this scene really sells the idea that this is Luke's first time going into a city like this, and he's out of his element. There's even some parts of it that are very creepy, from the eerie buzzing of the microphone with no music added. Here, take a listen. Also, we see Han make out with this girl, as Han apparently was said to have a woman in every spaceport in Tatooine, which in some ways adds to his character and makes Luke's jealousy of him more reasonable, but then again, it is distracting from what matters right now in this scene. 2. Luke in the desert Tashi Station. I love the liminal vibes of this, where we have him standing next to this. I love the liminal vibes from the little scenes like this here, where he's standing next to the huge Tatooine architecture, obviously based around moisture farming, and we get this nice interaction between him and Biggs and this group of, I don't even know what you'd call them, but I don't know, it's a nice little scene. And yeah, I think it just adds to it. Also, you get to see them looking up at a Star Destroyer and how they have really no clue what's going on. I don't know, it just adds a little bit of a sense of scale here, and even though we see these space battles up close, this shows that even when we're looking at these in this fantastical manner, the smaller characters on the planet actually see it in more of a realistic way, which I think adds an element of some of that 70s grit to it that we see in the original trilogy a lot. 1. Luke and Biggs. This happens right after the last scene we discussed, and I really like it because in my opinion it makes Biggs' death in the end heartbreaking and would have fleshed out Luke's character more, as well as the world building of the movie. So here's a fun fact. There was actually a shot of a hidden gun on the Millennium Falcon shooting at stormtroopers that was cut from the Mos Eisley escape scene. This shot was later used in The Empire Strikes Back in the scene where Han, Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO reach the Millennium Falcon on Hoth. For The Empire Strikes Back, we have 11 different deleted scenes, with it being the original trilogy movie with the most deleted scenes to look at. And 11th is Luke and Leia Medical Center. Now, my reasoning behind the placement of this one is very simple. So it turns out they did not know that Luke and Leia would be siblings in this movie, and that's why I get this really weird scene of them kissing. Well, this is literally just that, but like way too far, and it's like very slow romantic scene between them, and it's pretty disgusting. So yeah. 10 is Luke's recovery. This is a completely unneeded scene of Luke in a back-to-tank for 2 minutes, with the main characters worrying about him, even though he's almost completely fine in the next scene. 9. The fate of General Veers. This makes the Empire less triumphant here, where we basically see General Veers get kamikazed in the same way that Admiral Pete dies, or Admiral Piet, not Pete, in Return of the Jedi. And I don't know, I just think this scene is a very big victory for the Empire, which we don't usually see, and it just kind of ruins the moment, so I don't think we really needed that here. 8 is Han and Leia extended Echo Base argument. So this basically just takes that basically perfect scene of Han and Leia having this really great chemistry on Hoth here towards the beginning, sort of building their rivalry, which later becomes romance. The problem is, in the extended version, Han or Leia, one of them comes back to the other, and they have some of the most like awkward Shakespearean dialogue. It's like way worse than prequels dialogue, and I love prequels dialogue, but it's just not really that great. So yeah. 7 is alternate Han and Leia kiss. This one's not really necessary. It's basically just an extended version of that romance scene, but it's not too terrible either, so it's kind of right here in the middle. 6. Leia tends to Luke. This is actually nice to hear Luke find out about Han, but they ruined it with another brother-sister kiss. 5. Deleted Wampa scenes. So there's actually a lot of these in the movie. You can't really just have it as one entry, but basically, first of all, when Han and Leia are arguing, like we talked about earlier, there's going to be a shot of a Wampa clawing on the side, because basically there's this whole subplot where the Wampas were invading the Echo Base, and the rebels were trying to fend them off and keep them out of the important areas. By subplot, I mean like 3 or 4 minutes of the movie. It's not like it's some 30-minute sequence or anything, but I don't know, it's just, to me, I do really like how it makes Hoth seem like a cool planet. It almost has like deep sea vibes or something like that, so I think it really works there. But at the same time, it does take away from the seriousness of the battle. And we even get this moment where some snowtroopers open the door and one of them grabs one of them and then they close it again. It's very comical, and I just don't think it really fits here. 4. Hiding in the asteroid. This has a very cool, claustrophobic, practical shot, which I really dig, but is very useless otherwise, and it's right during that sort of asteroid chase space slug scene. 3. Lobot's capture. So remember that guy Lobot that's in the movie for like 5 seconds? Well, basically we would have seen him running around trying to escape from stormtroopers before he is captured by some of them. I just think it's kind of cool to see a little more of this character Lobot, but definitely doesn't add too much to the film. 2. Luke versus Vader. This gives a little more victory to Luke here after the training he went through, where basically we see him cut into Darth Vader's suit 3 different times before kicking him off the platform at the beginning of the fight. And I don't know, it just adds a little more to the fight, and it might have been a little more violent, which probably could have been used here. 1. Yoda's test. This is where Yoda is on Luke's back. Admittedly, he does make a very strange face here, but he's on his back and he lifts something with the Force. Luke has to use his lightsaber to cut it down. It would have been great to see Yoda teach Luke on lightsabers, an important part of a Jedi. Lastly, we have Return of the Jedi. At 8th place is Luke throwing Vader his lightsaber. So basically, you know how Luke didn't want to fight Vader at all and was basically refusing? Well, this version of the scene took it a step further, and basically Luke just straight up threw his lightsaber to Vader and was like, "Nah, bro, I'm not fighting you at all." And you can actually see this. You can actually see this in the final scene where you have Luke's hilt on Darth Vader's belt. I don't know. We don't have much footage of this, but to me, it just doesn't really sound like it would have worked very well on screen, and would have made Luke seem just a little bit too passive here. 7. Luke uses a Force jump. A great show of Luke's updated Force abilities, and would make the Rancor scene more complex, but isn't much more than that. And yeah, literally Luke just jumps onto the gate here trying to get away from the Rancor. 6. Tatooine Sandstorm. This is a nice scene right after the Jabba sail barge explosion, after that whole sequence, where we get all of our main characters going back to the Millennium Falcon and the respective X-Wing for Luke. We get a nice character moment between Han and Luke, which I really like, where they basically, Han says he owes Luke one, which is kind of cool, after Luke owed Han 2 different times in the beginning of the second movie. But nonetheless, it's definitely kind of ruins that beautiful transition where they blow up the sail barge and then it cuts to space, which I personally love, so I can see why they took it out. 5. Rebel raid on the bunker. This has more warfare, which I'm all for because I think Star Wars has a surprising lack of actual wars in the movies, which I don't know, I would have liked to see more war movie elements, but at the same time, this scene really is not that great. It's kind of like a lesser version of the Tantive 5 scene from A New Hope, where you get some stormtroopers and rebels fighting in a hallway, but it's pretty good at the same time. 4. Jar Jared's conflict. So remember the Admiral Jar Jared? Well, better warfare is shown here than in the last one anyway, because we basically see inside of the sort of targeting area with the Death Star, which is not something we see too much, and it shows the Imperials actually being competent for once, where they're actually doing their best to stop the rebels from blowing up the Death Star a second time, and newsflash, they failed again. 3. Extended Luke versus Vader fight. This has prequels like choreography in the sense that it's like really fast paced and just a lot better than usual, what you'd expect in these movies. It does ruin a great transition where we kind of get Palpatine looking at the two of them and then it cuts to the battle, which I think that's a great transition, but at the same time, I mean, this would have added a little more. We get Luke doing this little jump, which might even count as a Force jump also, and I don't know, I just think it makes the fight a little longer, a little bit better, and probably would have stuck out in your head a little more, at least the beginning of it, because otherwise it's kind of just like they hit back and forth and he kicks Vader down the stairs, but this adds a little bit to it. 2. Vader's arrival and reaching out to Luke. This gives us a look into Luke's lightsaber creation, and also kind of builds on Vader's redemption later on, as we get more scenes of him trying to reach out to Luke, which almost feels like that's what Vader really wanted in the end, was a relationship with his son or really anyone in his family, and this movie kind of capitalized on that, which is really nice. 1. Battle of Endor. The Lost Rebels. So, the worst mistake of this movie is not including more of the Battle of Endor. I mean, it could have been truly legendary, especially with the B-Wings, which we never really see in the final film except in the background. But basically, this deleted scene refers to multiple different shots of pilots, actually some women pilots too, which is very rare for the original trilogy to have any sort of female military, but there were a few of them here, and it's kind of a shame they got cut out of the movie, as I think that would have, I don't know, made it a little more diverse there, which would have been nice. And also we get a Mon Calamari pilot, as well as a Celestin, so there's some really good species and different characters there. I think this would have made this sequence a lot better, assuming this meant like another 5 minutes of just dogfighting and, you know, trench running and stuff. All of that would have been great. Also, we get this guy running around the Millennium Falcon, shooting off TIE fighters while Lando's going crazy. So I think it just would have made that whole part of the movie way better, and overall just would have been a lot more enjoyable for the most part. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. Please leave a comment down below for any video suggestions, questions about this video, or just letting me know how your week has been. Consider checking out the merch store for some really cool summer merch, including some different hoodies and graphic tees. I upload normal videos every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, I post shorts every single day. But yeah, see ya.